Welcome to Space Insiders. My name's Tony Sewell, and as usual, here with my space mate Rob. How you going, Rob?
Always great. Always good to see you, Tony. I'm a little tired from travel this week. Took a red eye last night. Way too old for that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
rough. Really
No,
rough.
just a week in the office for me. A few late night meetings this week. I'm just starting to catch up on some of the news from reInvent,
Mm.
AWS reInvent event. I had a bunch of my colleagues there. I wasn't there, although I'm thankful I wasn't there. But I was actually just catching up on one of the keynotes from Amazon's CTO Werner Vogels. He's done 14 keynotes, which is
Yeah.
a lot, and this is his last one. Which it was kind of interesting. Like, it was a little bit kind of sentimental, and he was talking about sort of the Renaissance developer. But what I really loved, like, I think firstly, there's a changing of the guard. Like, he's passing the torch on, and I think that's really important for the company. But he talked a lot about curiosity, and
Mm.
it made me think about what we're doing on this podcast, and like, learning about new things, and it is really important to me, and I'm learning a lot through this podcast. And he talked about curiosity leading to learning, which leads to invention, and experimentation and willingness to fail, and just sort of creating that sort of culture in developers. But I think more broadly, it's a really good trait. And it was nice to hear that, just because I really, it's an important part of my own sort of self-development. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
I love that, Tony. I feel like you don't hear the word curiosity enough,
Mm.
frankly. You
Yeah.
know, um, but in the world that we've lived in the last 5 to 8 years, I would say, in our careers together, it is an important word, and I think it means different things to different people. I think in the startup world, again, I've never started a company. I've worked with startups. I've started businesses within big companies, but I remember I was at my alma mater a couple weeks ago, University of Maryland, where I got my MBA, and I was leading a panel there. And one of the graduate students asked a question in the audience, and they said, what's the best way to just meet people in the industry and like learn about everything that's out there? I mean, I'm a student, I have an interest, but how do I do any of this stuff? And actually my answer was around curiosity.
Yeah.
It was around, like, go to things like this, go to different forums, talk to people that are not necessarily just the engineers, but they might be lawyers, they might be policy people, they might be
It's
marketing
fascinating that
people.
you say that, because
Yeah.
the last thing that I had written down, which he said, is learning is social.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not just sitting in front of ChatGPT, sending it prompts and
Yeah.
taking what it comes back, or just reading, but it's about, like, talking to people, and like what we're doing, talking to different people. And
Yeah.
so it's a really simple message, but I think it's a good reminder in the digital world we're living in. The social aspects are so important.
I think I offended a lot of people in the audience when I was doing that because I said, stop looking at TikTok and get out of your dorm room and go talk to
It's
people.
true. It's true.
I know.
Yep,
I got a
absolutely.
few chuckles. I got a
Yeah.
few chuckles.
All right, Rob. So we've got a really fun guest with us today,
Hmm.
Nadine Alameh. She's a great friend of yours, a really well-known personality, and highly respected person in the geospatial industry. You tell us a little bit about Nadine?
She's a really good example of someone who's a leader with, like, a lot of humility and brilliance.
Mm.
She's a convener of a lot of diverse aspects of people. And what I mean by that is domain expertise and, maybe specific geospatial technical expertise or data expertise. It doesn't really matter, but, her experience in being the first female CEO for the Open Geospatial Consortium, OGC, what that was her role was not only does she understand a lot of the technology and the use cases and has a vision for how all of this can be brought to bear to make impact in business and frankly livelihoods as well. We'll talk a little, you'll hear a little bit about what we talk about there in public safety, but her ability to convene these people around certain topics and find consensus and collaboration is really powerful. And we talk a lot about that. And I think it's something that's really unique to her. And it's something that I've been very drawn to her as getting to know her over the years as well. So So I think everyone will really enjoy listening to what she has to say and the conversation that we have with her.
Yeah, she's just a wonderful person. I made the observation at the end that I'll be interested to go back and have a look at the video. But I felt like I was physically smiling a lot of the time. You could really feel how
Mm,
passionate she was, and for someone so accomplished, very humble, and yeah, no, great interview. Okay,
absolutely.
before we get to the interview, Rob, any news stories catch your eye this week?
Yeah, a couple of things around our friends at SpaceX. I think one in particular was that they got approval through Department of Air Force. I think it was this past week to have a brand new launch facility for Starship on the Space Coast in Florida. That's huge.
Tell you what, I'm glad I don't have a beach house in Melbourne.
Yeah,
So,
you got to wear these nerdy headphones all the time when you're walking your dog
I
outside.
mean, it's cool to watch that thing, but I
It
can't
is.
imagine what it is like being near it when it launches.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
I,
all these things down there are transformative to that community. I mean, if you've ever been
yeah,
there, I feel like it's an area that it once was booming during the Apollo ages, and then
mm,
kind of had a lull, and then after the space shuttle was kind of decommissioned, and now it's another burgeoning area. I
yeah,
mean, major companies like Blue and SpaceX and Lockheed and all these,
100%.
committing, hiring thousands of people in that area. So that's exciting. And the one thing that they're doing is they're going to be renovating the Complex 37 down at the Space Coast. So if folks don't know what that is, these are historical launch sites from 50 years ago
Hmm,
that were built specifically for the Saturn V for the Apollo missions, reused for several decades after for national security launches and other. But these are sites that have a lot of like interesting history. Um, and so it's kind of cool, it's not just a brand new facility with all new
yeah, it's got
technology.
that
It's
history.
it's meaningful. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's exciting. Um,
yeah,
and the other
awesome.
one quickly was that I think, kind of the world that you come from. I should not be the one talking about this, but space at Starlink and SpaceX just have been making some pretty aggressive moves into Asia now, specifically in India and Korea, where they are drastically, not kind of they're aggressively pricing monthly contracts anywhere between 30 some odd to 60 some odd dollars a month, really targeting rural areas now. So it's not
Yeah,
really just about how I think these LEO telecom communication capabilities, like where you're a leader, Tony. It's not just about being competitive with telecom. It's like this is now really about, which I think is really cool, is putting more people online, which is like I think
100%.
really
Yeah,
the whole point at the end of the day. So I
yeah.
thought that was exciting too.
It is. I saw and saw some snippets of I think they were presenting at a recent conference in Papua New Guinea. But you just think of it like just how transformational these technologies
Hmm.
are, and how it's just broken this threshold that traditional VSAT was never able to do, for remote communities and disconnected communities. I mean, that's why. I mean, that's what makes me excited about being in
Hmm.
this industry. Whether or not they're they're a few years ahead of us or not, but plenty of room in the
There's plenty
industry
to
for
go
everyone.
after.
Plenty to go
Plenty
after.
to go
Yeah.
after. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think it might be a good time to bring in Nadine. What do you reckon?
Let's do it.
All right.
She's great and very excited.
See you in a minute. All right, welcome back, and really pleased today to have a distinguished member of the geospatial community, Nadine Alameh. Thanks for joining us, Nadine, and great to meet you. Rob's told me so much about you.
Yay. Thank you, Tony. And thank you, Rob, for the nice words.
It's great to
Okay,
see you, Nadine. Thanks again.
exciting. Let's do this.
So, Nadine, just to get us going, tell us a little bit about yourself. You've recently started a new company too, Lunate.ai. We'd love to just hear a little bit about you.
Yes. First, I have to say, I stumbled on geospatial by luck. So if
Hmm,
anybody's listening and wondering how do we get into geospatial, sometimes it's total luck, but also if geospatial is everywhere, then wherever you stumble, you
yeah.
stumble on our, on our industry. So I started, MIT had scholarships. It was in the urban planning department. They were using this GIS technology. And I think once you start seeing the world from this perspective of maps and spatial patterns, what's next to what, right? How does, one thing happening here impact another phenomena over there? It becomes everywhere. So I am lucky to actually have started what I call before the web. Then came all the web mapping, right? So we started that. We took that to NASA, right? So imagine having all of NASA's data that was so scientific. If you needed to be a true researcher, scientist to be able to use NASA's data. And we started to put it out as interoperable web maps via standards at the time. So that's very exciting. So I got to see the government perspective, right? So the government, which is you can rely on the data, but also it's slow and bureaucratic. And of course, now the world is changing a little bit, especially here in the US. And also with the amazing advancement in the commercial space sector, right? You don't just need NASA these days. You have so many other options, which is great for our field. I got to the Open Geospatial Consortium. So that's like what my view into what the nonprofit world is and how do you bring people together so that we're not all in silos and not just in data and systems, but honestly as disciplines and communities, right? Transportation people do transportation and aviation people do aviation. Most of the time, they're the same problem. So long story short, I started a research institute around geospatial. So there's the theme, because it keeps changing. We had cloud and, now we have AI, and we'll talk all about that. In my consulting practice, I'm trying to help my customers make sense of all of this. There's tons of data. There's this AI thing. There are more foundation models now that we can count on our, fingers, right? There are all these amazing applications. So how do we make, government agencies, for example, make them AI ready, right? How do you modernize their infrastructure? How do you help them sort out through the use cases where we can help, right? Our sector, this Earth observation, space, geospatial, right? So that's what I'm trying to do.
I can hear the passion in your voice. It's incredible.
Yes, it's exciting times. It's exciting times. This is, again, if you're listening and you're like, is this a sector I should, it is. This is the time. Yes.
Nadine, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Open Geospatial. God, what do you call it? What was it? The Open Geospatial Consortium. Sorry. Just so you know, I came back on a red eye last night. I'm half baked. But anyway, so with OGC
acronyms, right? We were talking about acronyms. This is it.
Oh boy.
Yep.
And this is for you, Tony, too. So I don't know if you remember, but I think it was 2 years ago. Nadine was very gracious and invited me to go to Frascati, Italy, which I'd never heard of before.
Oh, I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah, at the European Space Agency, ESA. And first of all, I was like, Italy, yes, I'll go to that. That sounds great. And then I flew into Rome, and it was an hour outside of Rome, and I end up in this little town. And it was just incredible. Like, it's just, what you would think of as like a little European town, really good food. People were walking in the streets. I show up at ESA, and I'm the only person there from the company. And I go there, and the energy, I remember the energy in that group was incredible. It was, I'm not going to do it justice, Nadine, but maybe you can kind of explain what it was really all about. But it was a lot of like brilliant minds coming together to figure out how we can really collaborate around this industry, which I always really enjoyed because I kind of came from the open source world years and years ago from Sun Microsystems, and it requires collaboration and integration and talking about the difficult things. And I remember I attended a few sessions, and a lot of it was around like very deep technical discussions on standards and how we can like integrate the information. And so, when you just talked about, readying the industry for AI and, and how all the, and getting the data ready for that, like you were in the middle of that. Not only that, yeah, I think weren't you the first female CEO for that organization too? I think it's
Yes.
fascinating. Can you talk a little bit more about your experience there and um and maybe even more about, to help people understand how important is that organization in the community to do the things that like you want to do personally and the impact you want to make?
Yes. Well, this is like 10 questions in one, Rob.
I know.
So
I'm sorry. Like I told you, I'm kind of half baked here.
I love it. But this is what I also love. When you remembered the experience, you didn't start with the technology. You started with the setting and with the people, which
Hmm.
I think is why I am, of course, biased, but this geospatial community is a unique community because I think geospatial started with everything related to the earth and geography, and you cannot do this just in my town. So we're by nature a little bit more global, more collaborative, right?
Mm.
And you can see that. So in that meeting, what I love about the geospatial community coming together is the many nationalities that show up, the many accents, the many disciplines, because it's never, like I said, like I was an engineering student, stumbled on urban planning, then civil engineering and aviation. People come from everywhere, and this is very, very unique. So coming from everywhere is great, but eventually we are all here to build systems for decision making. So how do you then interoperate? That's the problem. It's great, we're diverse, but how do you, and this is where standards and interoperability start to come in.
Hmm.
If you think about it, how many data formats, how many ways you can access the data, how many systems it's in, how we name things. Oh my God, like the semantics of all of this is the problem of standardization and interoperability. And I was very lucky, right? Because at the I keep saying every 5 years, I say, this is the time for geospatial. So when I was at OGC, I was like, this is the time for geospatial. Now I say, this is the time for because at the time, it was the beginning of cloud. So we really changed everything. Think about it, right?
Hmm.
The formats have changed. They're now cloud native formats, right? The way we share data has changed. It's not FTP, it's not URLs, it's not an API, right? It's like it's on the cloud. It's everything. So I feel like at that forefront of that amazing change, which then opened the door to AI, right? So I created the GeoAI, opened the door to digital twins,
Hmm.
because you need that certain minimum level, right? So that you can create these big structures, ecosystems. And then my favorite is I also started this group on startups, because now we've lowered those barriers for access and discovery and so on. Um, Ideas, people, smart people, amazing.
And that's a
Again,
Taylor Institute, right? They're referring to, or
no,
no?
no.
Was that part of
This
OGC?
is a whole. This was at OGC. We started like an actual group on the startups, and it was like a whole. I mean, now it's even more, which is even more amazing, because now we have AI and foundation models and so on. So, anyways, it's great to be part of this community. It's great that we have frameworks to interoperate and ways to collaborate.
So Nadine, I think a lot of us in our daily lives we take this technology and the way we interact with geospatial data for granted. Can you give us an example of thinking about the open standards, like where that really makes a difference to a real world problem? Just to so people can kind of relate with the idea of why standards are so important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We often, so Rob, you probably experienced it. The most common use case that clicks with people is usually disaster response.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, we're getting more frequent disasters and we're getting more severe disasters. And disasters impact us as people, right? You, your family, your life, right? So imagine, right, that you're the mayor and you know a flood is coming and you got to evacuate half of the town, right? And you have to figure out, which, like, who do you evacuate? When do you evacuate them? Where do you evacuate them to? How do you send the critical resources there, right? Who do you notify? How long, right? How do you keep track of the weather on top of all of this? What is the elevation of your town so you can see which areas are more prone for flooding or not? What are the mobility patterns? Where are people concentrated? What's their socioeconomic? So all of this is why you need standards, because the mayor or any decision maker doesn't have 5 days, right? You have, hours, minutes, and now with AI, even faster, right? So how do you bring all of these data that, you think about it, are stored in different systems, are maintained by totally different parties, right? The people maintaining the census don't have anything to do with the elevation model and the hydrology science, right, of flooding and all of this. That's interoperability. Like this, we need to bring them like this because there is no time. So I think this is the most, example that resonates the most.
Mm. What is the state of interoperability in this space? Like, I mean, are these groups working? Are people standardizing? Like,
So we are way better than we used to be, ages ago, for example, right? Again, because we have lowered the barriers overall, right? I'm fascinated because what I think it's getting much easier. One, because our problems are, we always say the problems are cross boundaries, right? Migration, again, flooding, disaster, whatever. It's like, oh, sorry, my county stops here. No, this thing is going. So you got to even, you have to link the data, you have to link the decisions. And then this is when I bring the startup world, I'll say it again, not because Rob is here, and we've worked on cloud and this transformation. I mean, Rob, you guys were part of this the total transformation of our field. You see companies like Carto, like Earth Mover, like Wearabots, like Seer AI, they're building these platforms on top of things like Snowflake and Databricks, right? They're making it easier for everybody to bring data through multiple APIs, right? Through one interface. So we're so close. Part of our issue is, you can bring data, but the semantics are not the same. That's still an issue. So one more thing, I'll mention now that I'm thinking about it, is what AI has done to all of this, right? So before, I mean, again, I'm going to age myself because I'll tell my kids, like, when we first had the World Wide Web, we literally sat down and wrote the HTML code, like ding, ding,
Really?
ding, ding, ding,
God,
close
that's
the bracket. I know.
really? Geez, you are dating yourself, Nadine.
Yeah, so because it
No,
was
I remember
like,
that. I
what
remember when I
was it?
first wrote a snippet of HTML code, and
Yes.
it was cool because I put a button on a web page.
Yes,
I think I remember
but
doing
it's
that
not.
too.
Also, that's what I also tell people. And now I created a timeline, by the way, of like all these innovations. It didn't happen that long ago. I mean, we're talking like the late 90s. So actually, listeners, we're not old. Things are happening this fast. But AI is doing the same thing for the geospatial. So before we sat down as software engineers and literally wrote the API for this and that, and and now seriously, people are doing it code free. Code free. You can bring building data from Overture Map and from the Housing Authority and put it on a map, and you don't have to write a single line of code. Right?
Crazy.
I mean,
I know.
amazing.
It's amazing and crazy. Well, on that point, if I could pull that thread a little bit. So, what do you think with AI and agentic AI? And I know I'm interested in kind of what you're doing now with your new business, but in terms of standards, like to Tony's question too, do you think Do you think the approach to interoperability, data sharing, and all that kind of stuff changes with AI? Because part of what I'm hearing and kind of my own
Hmm.
thoughts on this is that, you know, when you think about how much time, effort, and money that's spent on figuring out how do you define. I remember the days where you had to define the data element the same everywhere, unless nothing worked. Then there was this thought about, you know, well, you make these
Mm,
definitions and a little bit more flexible, and you put them in XML documents, and all these systems have to understand it. Then there was the whole ETL, you know, period of which all this still exists, by
yes.
the way, because there's legacy systems, but ETL processes and everything else. But now, I guess, you know, with this idea of building an agent that can be autonomously learning about things, do you think we could just rely on that new, I guess, paradigm around computing and data
Mm.
standards and interoperability on an agent that just will just kind of understand and translate it for you in some ways? And if we can be smart about, you know, like one agent talking to the next, do we really have to go through all those efforts of standardizing the data? Maybe it's just each understanding each other based on the context of what it looks like in a broader, you know, as it's
Mm.
learning. You know, so do you think that is going to be something we'll still have to really focus on, is the data element standards in all of this?
So I think you are you are asking the question of the day, right? I just literally came back from an Earth observation workshop at the Academies of Science and Engineering here in DC. And part of it is we need to rethink. We've been saying this, I think, for the last couple of years. We need to unlearn and relearn. Because the premise of why we need standards and why we need certain organizations, right, is changing, right? And this is, your question is spot on. What I'm seeing, because I love this, we're all in this exploration mode together, right? Nobody, I mean, I can't tell you the answer. Nobody has the answer. We're all figuring it out. So I'm seeing the experimentation of how far you can go with the agentic AI and all of that, how far you can go with foundation models, right?
Hmm.
So you can say, show me all the grass, right? Or show me all the solar panels, right? Without an ontology in the background, right? That's the amazing thing, right? These
Yeah.
things are self-training. The embeddings are not, I clicked on every pixel and said what it is. And then there's the camp of eventually those language models will reach their max, and you have to go back, if you're serious, essentially, to that, the ontology of the domain. So, and I think honestly we're in the middle. What do the standards of tomorrow, which ones do we need? Because again, another simple example, we all used to bring up the example of our power plugs. I can go anywhere because of IEEE. I can plug whatever, but now we do things wirelessly.
Yeah.
So again, and I think this is the question, Rob, and this is
Yeah.
what we need to figure out together rather than independently. That's
Yeah.
where then organizations like OGC would be helpful, to have this thinking, this exploration together.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So Nadine, sort of moving on to into the kind of the startup component of that, like where you're seeing these opportunities, like what are the more exciting areas for of startups and sort of areas of this technology that you're seeing through your interactions today?
I am.
What
Is
really
it like?
excite? What are the types of
Yeah.
sort of the areas that startups are looking at that really excites you?
So the reason I'm like thinking about it, because I have two bubbles in my head, and that I'm equally excited about. There's the bubble before I get to the startup, what I call the big tech, right? What the big tech is doing just within like the last 9 months,
Mm.
right? NASA and Microsoft, they have an Earth Copilot, right? IBM has the whole TerraMind thing that has 9 modalities under it. Google released Alpha Earth, again, where you can do geospatial reasoning and combine your own models and all of that. Meta joined the party, and now they have, those self-training computer vision that can be applied to satellite imagery. AWS partnered with Esri to create a generative AI within ArcGIS. So there's there's all of this, right? That's why I get like excited about the startups, because they can use all of this. And now I'm totally using my hands, right?
Yeah.
We're creating a combination, right, of open and not open, right? Not everything is open, right? These are big companies, but so much room for innovation. And so the startups that I like get me excited are people like Legend, right? They're saying, I want to make Earth searchable. Are people like Carto, who are developing like a map GPT, right? Again, lowering the barriers. You don't even have to know, right? Where's the nearest Starbucks? And I say it, right? They're saying AI is the new UI, which is very true. People like Zephyr, right? So they're combining, they're trying to make AI spatially aware. So you can put, augmented reality and, say, where's the nearest coffee shop that has Death by Chocolate dessert and the band playing, right? That's it. That's all you say. It figures out where you are, where's the shop, and you did not go in. Nobody went in and inputted the data. It's harvested, right? It's harvested from points of interest, from menus that are on the web, from social media. I mean, that's the thing. Speaking of social media, people like, or startups like Dante.ai, who are bringing all these different modalities so that they can tell you like how long your roof will last. And literally you sit there, it's like, how long will my roof last? If, the pattern continues, or if the pattern triples. Think about this. Like, this is what excites me. These are startups, 2, 3, 10 people, right?
Yeah.
Not, you need the, it's amazing. And these are just examples. I have so many, because it's this. I'm working with these guys, and they get me hopeful for the future.
So one of the things that we've seen as we've interviewed different people in different parts of the geospatial and space environment is that how much the skills to start these businesses has changed. Where like 30 years ago, you couldn't. There was little entrepreneurship in launch. You had to be you had to be an engineer with Northrop Grumman or Boeing or one of these guys, and how that has changed. And we met with our mutual friend Phil Cooper a few episodes ago, and we talked about how the role of the geographer and the career as a geographer has changed over the years. So what are the I guess the key skills areas where, for young people that are thinking about getting into this, what are some of those key skill areas that are really important to innovation entrepreneurship in this area today?
So that's spot on, because I know Phil is very passionate about this topic. So it gets me excited, because I got into this from the computer science and software engineering to start with. And I used to say, because you can get any job with this. And now it's the AI. It's building, right? I mean, we're still in that same, software engineering, AI, whatever, again, using my hands, pathway. My favorite part in all the startups, I usually in every presentation, I have at least one slide on startups that are doing amazing things that you've never heard of, right? Because they're coming from everywhere. And the good thing is, like, these are not researchers. So they're not, just researching something. This startups means you got money. Somebody believed enough in you and what you're trying to do. You got a potential customer, and some of these are selling, which means it's not a proof of concept. I'm doing, right. So what I'm seeing mostly is the generation that's coming from the AI world, right? And I love it, because they come to do digital twins or the foundation models, or any type of application. And then they get to a certain point where, like, I think I need to know a little bit more about geospatial. right? Because you can only go so far without knowing this, what data sets you're working with. And, you know, so this is then what then brings them to our community. So we need the AI, software engineering, and we need the understanding of what's under the hood. We had an interview recently, a fireside chat with Seraphim, actually, in the UK, and they said the successful people are the ones that combine the technology, but also with the application domain expertise. So I'm like, I'm developing a foundation model. It's great. What does it do for me? But they can even go tell you. In terms of skills, this is a big, big topic in geospatial. You have to be multidisciplinary. You have to be, including communicating, because we have failed as a community to be good at communicating what we do, so we remain hidden. That's another conversation. Is hidden, maybe hidden is good because, we're the pipes, right? But at the same time, you need to know what's driving your systems. And I've been seeing recently, more frequently, in the UN context. So I sit on a UN committee on geospatial, and it's leadership training. So it's not just training for the young generation. It's training for our current leaders of big government organizations, of ministers, right? Because they need to know this. Because when you tell them you got to evacuate half of your people, we have to find a way to communicate.
Yeah. The other thing too, with all that you just said, Nadine, it just makes me it reminds me, and it makes me think, it reminds me of what in my when I used to be a consultant, and the whole kind of machine learning topic was really starting to get hotter and hotter. Yeah, there's a lot of literature out there would say you always need, in order to make use of your data nowadays, because there's so much of it, don't waste your time deleting things you don't think you need. Just put it all in one place, call it a data lake. And then he said the team required to actually get value out of it is really like three major roles. One is a data scientist, the individual that can actually write the algorithms and the quote unquote, before the model term got popular in the last couple of years, like the models. The second was a data engineer, which was a lot of what OGC and what your leadership was around, is like, how do you just actually make sure that if the data is defined one way from this system and it's defined a different way in this system, but it kind of means the same thing, come up with a common definition and structure and schema. And the third one was domain expertise, which is what you just mentioned. What I think is interesting about AI now is that it's even more important, I think, to have the domain expertise. I actually almost think that if you think of those three kind of legs of the stool, you're going to actually, the most important role will be that domain expertise, because a lot of the other stuff is going to be a lot easier now. And frankly, maybe you don't even need like an oil and gas upstream expert if you're trying to build a dashboard for something in that industry nowadays, because you could use AI to get some of that domain expertise. So yeah, that co-pilot concept is, maybe you don't need to be the 30-year veteran that's a geologist anymore. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to see that. But I think as these things change, especially for the geospatial area, because it is a monster. I mean, I think you can apply it to almost anything, right? That I think some of these principles and these changes in the industry we're going to see a lot more value from geospatial. And one of the things we talked about with Phil actually was, I think we were talking about, where do you think all this is going to go? And part of the things that we mentioned were, maybe geospatial doesn't even need to be mentioned at some point, depending on what the use case is, because it might be just an embedded piece of logic, that's part of an ERP system or a product management system or an alerting system for, we mentioned disaster recovery and things. So, I don't know. I think it's exciting to see where a lot of this goes, but I think AI is going to I think it is going to really change this particular industry and how companies and people could get more value out of it. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes too. And having said
Absolutely.
all that, I think that's why it's kind of a leading question. I think that's why you're doing what you're doing now. So, what is it you're doing now? Can you tell us a little bit more about your new company and kind of the mission behind it?
Yeah, so what I feel is we're throwing everything we're talking, and I cannot believe like this episode combines so many topics, by the way, in like one. So
It's
kudos
true.
to you, and hopefully this is resonating with the listeners. But everything we're talking about, we're literally throwing at the world and saying, and good luck to you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think this is what I feel my value is these days, because I've got this front seat globally. I was just in China to see what they're doing on Earth observation and analytics in the Middle East, in the US, in Canada, in Africa, right? So, and it's like, and then how the user, the customers, in my case, the two, the government and the startups, that's how at least I'm splitting my time. For the governments, I mean, think about it. They're just like inundated with this. And what do you do? What do you do? Is it a digital, like another part of an AI, digital transformation at agency level? Do we start with some pilot project? In this case, which ones? Where is the maximum, the bang for the buck, right? You're not going to transform everything. It's like, I don't have the people. You're throwing at me that there are all these companies. Should I buy their products? All of this is it's consulting, right? It's like it's strategizing how you evolve with the times, especially that it's not fixed. It's actually the opposite. We're at the beginning of a journey, so you cannot put all your eggs in one basket, whatever that is. And for the startups, it's what I mentioned. It's actually the buzz is from the AI discovering that we have this unbelievable data for years and years and years in geospatial, because that's machine learning, right? We've got it all, baby, right? And helping them in that case would be go-to market. What is like? Who's the customer? Who buys all of this? You can have the best dashboard, right? Who is buying all? So it's this is where we are right now, and we'll see how we go. The other point, I think, again, as a business opportunity, is whatever you're going to build today, there's nobody you can call and say, I need this. It is a puzzle we're assembling. So we can help assemble that puzzle safely.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes. So does your company, what are you doing with your current company? Is it a consulting firm, and like who are you targeting? And for those that are out there that really do need help and want to get more value from their geospatial data, is that something? How do you actually help those, given your new venture?
Yes. So I'm targeting government agencies, right, who want to modernize their infrastructure, leverage geospatial, leverage the AI and geospatial. Modernization in general. I am targeting digital leaders, right? So it's an advisory. So it's advisory. It's a high-end advisory. So if you're in the insurance business, the banking business, the ESG business, the climate, right? Same thing. How do you make sense of all of this? So it becomes strategies and roadmaps for implementation and partnerships with the right, stakeholders in the ecosystem. And the startups are the fun part. It's just like, who's your customer? And, how do you differentiate yourself? And why should I trust your thing that's AI generated? Like, who are you? Right. And, and I have to say, this is the age of innovation. So there are, part of what I'm doing, for example, is advising companies building brand new types of sensors out there, right? So totally there, or working on the edge computing. We're going to put the GPU on the satellite, like, Planet has done and Satellogic has done. So it's like way out there, right? So advisory, because we've seen it all, and we need to ensure we don't forget everything that has happened, and we have to build. You always have to build, right?
Nadine, before we wrap up, I was interested to get your perspective on. So you're focused on sort of the executive sort of leadership and government and policy and whatnot. Are there particular challenges from a policy perspective that are sort of intractable, maybe not intractable, but really need to be addressed to unlock new opportunities in this space? Or are there particular governments that really get it and are really kind of forward thinking about this? I'm just sort of interested in your, and because obviously you have the interaction with the UN as well. So I'm just interested in that.
I think everybody gets it. It's just not easy, right? Because the dynamics, for example, between government and the private sector are changing. Issues, this is not policy issues, but like licensing issues keep coming up over and over and over again. The digital divide keeps coming up when we talk at the UN level, because, everything we're talking about is great, but there are still places where the decision maker doesn't have access to electricity or Wi-Fi, or, so we're sort of widening in a way that gap. There's a whole initiative right now called Map Africa, right? Because Africa doesn't have the coverage that other continents have, and because you need the data to do everything else. There are the issues of ethics and responsible use of, before we were saying of location data, because you can target people, et cetera, and now with AI and that combination, again, this is a big thing. And there's the governance. The governance is a big question, right? Who's doing what are the rules? And this is the Academy's Earth Observation, the Future of Observation workshop that we just end. What are the new entities that we need to have to actually have continuity, for example, of data across private and public sector? How do we actually collaborate and fill in the gaps? Not, again, we're all here in the room, so we collaborate, right? And again, the UN has a whole framework for adoption. It has 9, elements of it: the people, the innovation, the standards, the infrastructure, et cetera. I think, so long story, I think people get it. It's still not easy. And there's still lack of coordination across agencies, let alone more, right? Even here in the US, right? I mean, I've seen it in the Middle East as well. It's like, no, we're not going to talk to these people. This is another government agency, right? I mean, you see that even here, right?
Yeah.
No, we're NASA, we're the research, NOAA is operational, hence there's the line. It's like, the line is blurred everywhere. So I don't know if that answers the question.
That's great.
But there are many issues, Tony, many issues.
We'll have to have a series just with Nadine.
Somebody was saying yesterday, this is, I don't know if it's good or bad, but this is, I think somebody retiring from a government agency here in the US. And he's like, this is so great. We're going to be employed forever because there are so many issues.
Well, not sure we're seeing that at the moment. But anyway, on a different topic, we have one last question for you, Nadine.
Yes.
We like to end with something a little bit more, it's related but fun. Maybe it tells you a little bit more about who you are as an individual. This is a question. So if you could map anything in the world that hasn't been mapped yet, what would that be and why?
My initial instinct was to say outer space, actually, not so. It's talking about the world. And this is not because I'm crazy, because we're actually, as a community, starting to do that. If you talk to NASA and NGA, right, the coordinate reference systems, not just on Earth, because we have lunar missions, we have Mars, and eventually maybe the travel between the planets. That's what I would, that would be so cool, to do everything we've done for the Earth on a universal level. That would be amazing.
I love that. I mean,
great answer.
Yeah. I mean, I think about what a great answer, actually, because when you think about how much data has been collected over how many decades just around space, but what do we have? Like when we talk to our children about what's, we're if we can actually even see a star anymore, like in the cities, or maybe it's a satellite. Like what really is that? I mean, you always kind of refer to constellations. You have the little app on your
Mm,
phone where you can actually see where Orion is, but I
yeah,
think we're like still extremely early days on just understanding even what we've already understood or mapped in
yeah.
space. I think that's pretty cool, actually. My answer was going to be a teenage mind. That was going to be the one that I
Oh,
was going to.
no. I have
Maybe you don't want that.
two teenagers, and it's just like good luck to you, Rob.
No, I don't know.
But
Yeah, I don't know.
so no, but seriously, because we know, some friends working for NASA on the lunar mission, for example, and there's this whole like supply chain logistics part. As we keep going, and if you want to create things over there, and did that part make it, and where is it, and how do you track it, and where did it come from, and where is it on the voyage, and all of that, right? It's That's why I've said, if you're listening, I'm not crazy.
Yeah,
This is real.
I'd love to talk to you more about that actually offline, because
Yeah,
I think a lot of the things that I've been most recently working on involve kind of the intersection of defense tech, which space
yeah,
is a part of that. And then I think how do you bring some of those commercial capabilities and the innovations around AI to improve things like supply chain logistics, especially in like contested environments and hard to reach
yes,
areas. And I think those are going to be really important. Not to mention all the work that Tony's now doing in the with Amazon Leo slash formerly known as Kuiper. So I think there's a lot of excitement around all that too. But
yeah,
thanks a lot, Nadine.
yeah.
It was great to talk to you today.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you for having me, Rob. Thank you for your support over the years for the sector, for women, for interoperability. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Tony. This was so much fun.
Yeah, this was wonderful. Look, I'm a SAC. I came to I came to the industry into AWS as a SATCOM guy, but I've been exposed so much more to geospatial since I've been at Amazon. And um, what I love about geospatial is just the opportunities that it creates to help us understand Earth and the world around us and to solve real world problems. I'm not one of these people that wants to get strapped to a rocket and shot up into space, and that's what I've learned a lot from this discussion, so I really appreciate you joining. If people want to learn a little bit more about you, your business, where can they find you?
LinkedIn is the easiest.
LinkedIn.
Find me on LinkedIn. I also I started a geospatial research and technology LinkedIn group. So if you want to join that, because
Cool. Yeah.
I say I dump in there the things I find that are innovative and interesting. So join to follow the
Wonderful. I'll
latest.
make sure we get the link for that, and we'll post it in the show notes. All right. Well, thanks, Nadine. Thanks, Rob, and thanks to our listeners. If you like what we're doing here, make sure you rate us, write a review, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
See you soon.